göbeğinden bineceğiz şimdi tekneye. Şurada görünen tekne gibi bir tekne turu olacak. Herkese selamlar arkadaşlar. Yeni bir videoyla birlikteyiz. Öncelikle uzun araç videolarından sonra, araba inceleme videolarından sonra tekrar farklı bir videoyla karşınızdayız. Bugün bizim 50'lik yıl dönümümüz. Ve bunu kutlamak için Chicago Downtown'a geldik. Öncelikle bir Chicago Downtown'da bot turu yapacağız arkadaşlar. Daha sonra bot turundan sonra Brezilya restoranına gideceğiz ve orada güzel bir yıl dönümü yemeği yiyeceğiz. 2 yılımızı doldurduk. Chicago Downtown'da bot turuna sizler de katılmak isterseniz sizleri de bekleriz arkadaşlar. Birazdan bot turuna başlayacağız arkadaşlar. Arkamda harika bir manzara var. Görüyorsunuz. Chicago Downtown'ı daha önce bence hiç böyle görmediniz. Şimdi birlikte hep beraber bot turuna gidelim. Let's go. Herkes bekliyor. Bot turunu, tekne turunu bekliyor. Şurası da Trump'ın binasıymış. Trump. Turu da var galiba. Kanoya binmişler. Evet. Teknemiz geldi. Bu tekneye bineceğiz birazdan. Downtown'da bir de tekneyle görelim. Behlül'e benzemiyor mu? Bakın tekrar ortaya çıkacak. Behlül işte karşımızda. Behlül. Evet. Tekneye bindik sonunda arkadaşlar.
And I know I look great for my age. Thank you for saying that. Thank you so much. Sunscreen. That's the trick. Also, Cetaphil moisturizer. #1 dermatologist recommended brand. And we're going to learn a lot about Chicago in 90 minutes. Here's the first fact about this beautiful city. It burned to the ground. How many of you knew that already? A lot of you did. Yeah, good. That's common knowledge, right? It was the night of October 8th, 1871. It was the night of the Great Chicago Fire. Within 48 hours, 66% of Chicago had burned to the ground. That's 70,000 homes and businesses destroyed, 100,000 people homeless, and that killed almost 250 people. Terrible tragedy, right? Wouldn't you say? Yes. But prior to that fire, all of Chicago was made out of wood and cast iron. Obviously, that doesn't help. Not just buildings made out of wood, but also streets, sidewalks. This river was so polluted to the point where it would just self-ignite at random times. And we're still working on that last part, but with the help of the Bessemer process for rolling out steel, the invention of the elevator or lift, look around you. Look what happened. We rose from the ashes like a roaring phoenix. Kadar. To your right is the second tallest building in Chicago. It's the Trump International Hotel and Tower, designed by Adrian Smith, who currently holds the title for world's tallest building. Who knows what building that is? Somebody yell it out. Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Good job. Now, to give you all an idea of how tall the Burj Khalifa is, look up at that building back there and picture two of those stacked on top of one another. And that's how tall the Burj Khalifa is. The largest penthouse at the top of that building stands around 14,000 square feet. And that sold in 2014 for $17 million to a family in the suburbs. That's their second home, so good for them. Now back there, we just passed by a legendary building, the American Medical Association. Now back over your right shoulder, look, very minimalist design that was designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Now he revolutionized architecture with that style. His philosophy, less is more. He had many students of architecture, lots of which did not share this philosophy. And that's funny because these two buildings to your right were actually designed by his student. Bertrand Goldberg, the Marina City Towers. He designed these two buildings with two concrete cores that stretch to the top.
Arabaları görüyorsunuz arkadaşlar.
96 apartments.
Araba
I
park
would say
yeri
it's
burası.
fairly obvious that he rejected his teacher's philosophy, right? He came up with his own. It sounds a little passive aggressive because it is. This building's been up, him and his teacher never spoke again. His philosophy goes like this: there are no right angles in nature, so there shouldn't be right angles in architecture. So those buildings sorted through the public for a curve. I'm going to warn everyone now, if you hate puns, you're about to hate the next like 80 minutes of this tour. Because I love puns. To your right, you're going to see one of the oldest warehouse buildings on the Chicago River. This was built in 1919 by George Higgins. In fact, if you look at the first window there, you'll see George has been there since 1919. Now I want everyone to look at this building as a whole, okay? From this center clock tower, I want to ask you guys to count 6 bays going to the right, only 5 bays going to the left. It's not symmetrical. That might bother some of you. Because when they expanded this bridge right here, the LaSalle Street Bridge, they cut one whole bay off the end of this building to make room for the bridge, and then camouflaged it to look like the opposite end. So unless I pointed that out, you may or may not even notice it did anything. To our right, got 300 North LaSalle Street by Picard and Chilton in 2009. This right here is the greenest building on the Chicago River. And I'm not talking in color, y'all. I'm talking design. This building is platinum certified in LEED, environmental design. That's like the Oscars, architecture engineering. That building was almost entirely made out of recyclable material. Yeah. We're going to go to our right. You're going to see this thing even. This is the merchandise map. Designed in 1921 through 1933 by Graham Anderson Rose and Wright. Now this building, it was the largest concrete building in the country until the Pentagon was built. No joke, this building used to have its own zip code. That's how big it is. 425 million square feet of space. It was designed to accommodate nearly 14 warehouses for the Marshall Fielding Company. Now Marshall Field had ended up selling this building in 1945, and they sold it for about $13 million in back taxes. So that's the Kennedy family. And the Kennedy family sold the building again in 1998 for $575 million. Put that in your Dogecoin. translates to stinky onions. That's not a joke, that's actually what Chicago means. Now, we're going to start turning through the junction. We normally go up the North Branch, but I assume there must be a barge coming down from the North Branch, and we don't want to get stuck behind one of those things. Otherwise, this will be like an actual 3-hour tour. On a Gilligan's Island, we're at Mandela. To your right, yes, that was a reference to. Anyway, you got River Point. Now, this was built, finished in 2017. This is gold certified. Look at that reflection. It's beautiful, right? You see the arc in the base? Pay attention to this arc for later. Remember it, because I'm going to ask you guys to look back at it when we come out of the South Branch. But I want to talk about this bad game of Jenga. 150 North Riverside by the Getju Partners. Now, this plot of land, it's been vacant here for nearly, for about 70 years. You got rail yards on the west side, underground. You got the river on the east side. So this building had to be designed on a 40-foot wide concrete reinforced floor. Let me repeat this. Only 40 feet. Top side first photo. Yeah. Now building that tall, base that narrow, it's uncomfortable. I can feel you all get intense. Just look over your right shoulder. See how narrow this base is. Look at that. Yeah, just add insult to injury. Now, to balance this thing out, they have to use what's called a DAHA system. It's 4 large tanks of water at the top of the building, 160,000 gallons each. So the wind pushes the building, the top of the building, to one side. A mechanism at the top shifts. The water swashes at the opposite end of the building, pulling the top in the opposite direction, taking stress off the base, balancing the whole building out. Company. To your right is 100 North Riverside by Perkins and Wool. Now this building, this whole building is designed for the Metra and Amtrak rail. But this shorter portion we're looking at right here is actually not built on a foundation. This whole portion of the building, that's a bus, 1 second. That whole portion of the building is being suspended over the air ducts for the rail yard. It's not built on a foundation, it's being suspended using that truss system over your right shoulder. See those X bracings over there? Suspending the building. I want you to picture a diving board. That's what's happening right here. Now, what the heck is this? When you buy your homes, you also buy air rights above you. That way people can't build on top of you. So then you have to think, the owner of that building has to pay the rail yard almost $1.4 million every year to buy the air that's above the railroad tracks. It's the most American thing you're going to hear on this tour. Buying air. That's correct. Which is what all of you do every day when you buy a bag of chips. Box. I was just talking
Bu arada
about
benim herhalde binalarla ilgili bilgi vermeme gerek yok. Zaten videoyu çekerken arkadaşım sürekli konuşuyor. Videoyla ilgili
international style.
gökdelenlerle ilgili bilgileri veriyor zaten.
Did not design these buildings.
Benim herhalde konuşmama gerek yok.
Just
Sizi
popularized the style.
böyle gökdelenlerle baş başa bırakıyorum. Biz de izliyoruz yani Michigan Gölü'nde. Gerçekten güzel bir yer.
Mace Mandro picked up, came to Chicago, settled down here, and created, see that? Very similar to the outside of the John Hancock Tower, one might say. Same engineer. Here, though, he was asked to design 2 trading floors without pillars inside, so with block hand signals of stockholders. So he puts X braces here, so all of that weight gets put on the outside of the building. Now it's home to a fitness center next to the donut shop. So one might argue that's fairly American too. Put it on, take it off, rinse, repeat. To your right, I've got Gateway 4. Now this is designed by James DiStefano. This is what's called contextualism. Remember this style for later. This means a building is sympathetic to its surroundings. You'll see how the building's bending. See the river is also curving right here. It's foreshadowing the bend of the river. Using two types of convex glass creates a kaleidoscope effect of this thing over your left shoulder back there. Look up, the Chicago River map. Yeah, see that red pin back there? That's a "You Are Here" pin. That's you, that's me. So far, maybe 86 years. To your right, the former main Chicago post office, designed in 1921 through 1933 by Graham Anderson Groves and White. Now this, how many Chicagoans are on board this evening? Okay, a couple of y'all. Now, y'all know this building has been a huge problem for us. No joke, this building here has been sitting vacant for 30 years. Nobody's touched it. Now, before we get into why it's cursed, it was designed to be this large to accommodate the three major catalog houses in Chicago. Let me name those three catalog houses. Just yell them out. Sears. Number Woods. Spiegel. That was it. Yes, Spiegel. Now, a second landlock started to occur back in the 60s. Millions of pieces of mail kept getting jammed in the lodge. A series of internal fires kept breaking out throughout the building. And then we realized, asbestos bad, right? They decommissioned the building. It's been sitting vacant since then. The early 2000s roll by, and a British developer buys it. His name was Bill Davis. Bought it for like $20 million. But it's a landmark, and he couldn't afford to touch it, right? Anything that's a landmark is enormously expensive to renovate. He didn't know that. It was just sitting there. Chicago threatened to take the building back. Then in the summer of 2016, we'll buy it. And so bought it. This was the 601W. Bought it for around $155 million. Now get this. Bill Davies got signed over the rights to the building. And then croaks the very next day. There's a whole legal battle as to whether or not when he just signed over, if the guy was and moved them to the west side, which was a part of the Burnham plan, which we're going to talk about in a moment. To your left, a fourth one's going to go up. It's called the Reed. One of them's going to go from about $475K to $1.4 million. You can see where I got that information. But yeah, it'll be gorgeous once it's done. But y'all remember the corn cob towers I was just talking about on the main branch of the river?
Böyle galiba yeni bir tane gökdelen mi dikecekler? Ne yapacaklar?
Same architect, Bertrand Goldberg. This is his river city. Now this was the first phase of what was supposed to be a 4-phase design. This whole thing was supposed to snake up the south branch of the river. But due to the density of that design, it denied the rights for the other 3 phases. Now, Bertrand Goldberg, you might notice a theme with his work. He calls his buildings cities. Now, his teacher, right, Mies van der Rohe, was interested in how we occupy space. You can argue that Bertrand Goldberg was interested in space efficiency. He's trying to design cities within cities, making sure everything is readily available to his occupants. Just inside is a boat arena, daycare center, 1-acre climate-controlled park, dog park, swimming pool, gym, grocery store, office space, garage, like just so much inside. The telephone tower.
Bu arada inanılmaz bir sıcak var güneş tam tepemizde arkadaşlar. Yanıyoruz.
See it right there? Yeah.
Ateşten
Now I'm
yanıyorum.
pointing that out because
Arkadaşımız hala anlatıyor.
that was the location of Mrs. O'Leary's pond. Who knows Mrs. O'Leary's pond? Okay, a couple of you. We're going to talk about that. That is where the great Chicago fire started. It's also funny because that's now a retreat fireworks. That's the fire account. They got a big flag celebrating that's where the fire started. Like, this is where it happened. Like, to your right, you're going to see this former Union
Binası maşallah. Tam böyle binası ki. Tam iyi. Harika. Sürekli ayağıma basıyor. Sürekli. Kimse çocuğumuza sahip.
Folks, normally we go up the north branch of the river, and just a heads up, we're heading down the south branch. This is normally where I take a little bit of like cruise. So we'll talk about that in a moment. So I'm going to talk about the Great Chicago Fire.
Ya valla buradan daha iyi gözüküyor yani. Şu anda downtown tam ekranın tam içinde size gözüküyor. Şu tarafta şurada tren var, metro hattı var, metro trenleri orada duruyor.
South Roosevelt Street, which is the bridge right behind me. That telephone tower on your right shoulder back there. From there, all the way up to about
Sanırım Chicago'nun en büyük binası.
That's almost 4 miles from us, right? And 800 West Halsted Street to the lake. About a mile and a half, 2 miles in. Right? Now, we know that the Great Chicago Fire, like a guy on Reddit, okay? Just hear me out. I say this because the exact same night as the Great Chicago Fire, any of y'all hear of the Peshtigo Fire in Wisconsin? Or the Port Huron Fire in Michigan? You look those two, I can't believe Congress gave those windy winds from Chicago to there. Yeah. And that's where the Windy City comes from. It has nothing to do with America. See, we're not the windiest city in the country. Surprising. On this list, we actually rank about like 40th. Yeah, the Windy City. That's in reference to our politicians.
So would you guys do?
Sure. It's true. We talk a lot. They're easily swayed. Our last 2 governors have ended up in prison. Okay. It's looking like a 3rd, but we're working on it. To your right, you got one of the oldest vertical lift bridges in Chicago, built in 1910. This is almost 121 years old. It's crazy. Yeah, you drop these 2 concrete weights down. There's a whole bridge up to the center. Crazy. Yeah, now we're actually down here by Chinatown. Right now, this is Ping Tong Park, named after a major civil figure for the Chinese population of Chicago. Now, you have to think, half the population of this country ends up circulating through Chicago over a 6-month period. Now, you have to house a lot of these people. So Daniel Burnham, all throughout this portion of the city, starts designing about 250 buildings out of wood, cast iron, and staff.
Tabii tekne şuraya geçemeyeceği için çok alacak. Buradan geri dönüyoruz şimdi.
Any of y'all ever read the book, The Devil in the White City by Eric Carson? Very good book, right folks? Yes. I highly recommend picking this thing up. Any fans of serial killer podcasts out here? You're gonna love this book. Anyone heard of H.H. Holmes? You a fan of H.H. Holmes? You a fan of him? Not a fan? Good call. Man killed like 120 people. Right? Yeah. But this book tells the story of the fair from 2 perspectives. Daniel Burnham, who planned Chicago, and America's first serial killer, H.H. Holmes. During this fair, designed his whole murder hotel down on the southwest side of the city over here. Captured like 120 people. It's really crazy. Read the book, The Devil in the White City by Eric Carson. Very good. Now, many attractions would come out of this fair too. We're talking things like the brownie, Cracker Jacks, A1 steak sauce, Nikola Tesla's alternating current. In fact, at the World's Fair was the legendary battle between Thomas Edison's direct current and Tesla's alternating current took place. I hope we all know, we know this, right? Thomas Edison invented like nothing, right? Yeah, the light bulb, actually, most of it is designed for patented, but they were stolen. Yeah, but he failed at most of it, he patented all of them, so he went down in history as the inventor. He stole them. Anyway, back to architecture. No, but many other things too, like the Ferris wheel. World's first fair. You have to think, folks, the World's Fair previous to the one in Chicago was in Paris, and they unveiled the Eiffel Tower. And this stunned the world in its engineering, its civil engineering and architecture. And so Chicago kind of wanted to one-up yesterday.
I don't know why we even walked to I don't even know why we walked. It's way farther. It's way further. It's right here. I was really surprised when Chelsea said you guys went to the river and then back.
oluyor. Biz de tabii ki bir şeyler içelim değil mi? Ağzımız kurudu, güneşin altında yandık kaldık. Turumuz devam ediyor arkadaşlar. Şimdi herkes ayaklandı. İçecek bir şeyler alıyorlar. Şimdi bir şeyler almaya gittik. Şimdi downtown'a geri dönüyoruz. Burada bakın arkamızda gördüğünüz yere kadar gittik. Şimdi bu dönüşü yaptı. Ya biraz sus be kardeşim. Amma çevre başladı ya. Adam bir konuşuyor, yemin ediyorum. Bütün tekne dinliyor. Sabır. Neyse, ne diyordum? Bu dönüşü yaptı tekne. Şimdi downtown'a doğru geri gidiyoruz. Hem de bu arada bir şeyler içelim biz. Tekne turumuz devam ediyor arkadaşlar. Güzel bir gün.
But we're going to look up to straight over there to your right, that building with the statue on top. I'm sure you guys already saw it. Got the bridge in the way, but you'll get it in a moment. This is the Chicago Board of Trade, just there to your right. That statue up there is Ceres, the Roman goddess of agriculture. She represents everything being traded inside. She also doesn't have a face. I asked the sculptor why. His reply was, well, no one's going to build anything taller than this, so why would I do that? That's what we call overconfidence. But now this pink building with the teal crown on top, 311 South Racker Drive, designed by Cone, Henderson, and Fox in 1992. The crown up there is the brightest light in Chicago. It has almost 1,400 lighting fixtures. It originally had about 2,000. They had to remove this down to about 1,400 because the light was so bright, birds thought it was throwing off vibration patterns. Birds were flying up there, killing themselves. Heat about the lifetime. The man would be in that for 200. Now, the tallest building in Chicago is this black building with the white antennas on top. You know it. I know it. It's the Willis Tower. Exactly. Now, I'm from Chicago. It's called Willis. It's pronounced Sears. I had a Chicagoan over here just whispered, Jesus Christ. No. It was in 2005, the Willis Group, an insurance company, bought the naming rights for this when they expired. It's also interesting, the Willis Group also insured the Titanic. So, this building stands at 1,475 feet, but it is not one tall building. It is actually 9 different tubes bundled together. This is called bundled tubular construction. This allows the Sears tower to be enormously tall, but also be incredibly flexible. During severe weather, this building sways more than 18 inches in every direction. About a foot and a half. Yeah. Go up to the top of the building. Look at the toilets. Water sloshing around the bowls. People running around screaming. It's chaos up there. As we come out from under the bridge, you can look up. See the small glass boxes up there? Y'all know we're away with them. And one guy that told me on a very clear day he saw Ohio from up there. And I was like, okay.
Tekne turumuz devam ediyor. Bu arada bir şeyler içiyoruz.
As I said, 1,475 feet. It's at about 108 stories. He said it was going to stand at 109. That's an interesting story.
Chicago'da ne meşhur arkadaşlar? Downtown'da böyle arkamlara görünen köprüler var, kısa kısa köprüler var. Başka bir tekne.
Now, the antennas at the top of the Sears Tower don't contribute to the height of the building. This has been a controversial thing in architecture for a little while. Do antennas or spires contribute to the heights of buildings? No, they don't. They have to structurally assist the design to do so. Because those are just purchased by communication and broadcasting companies, they don't contribute. And 5 years ago, I guess Chicago was born. We had a giant ceremony for those antennas. A wedding ceremony. Those antennas got married 5 years ago. It's actually really cool. I got to go to the wedding. I can tell you all, the reception was awesome. a giant chair, right? The building is nicknamed Insol's Throne. Samuel Insol, this was their labor favorite, funded the building.
Şunun büyüklüğüne bak.
Lindsay funded it back in 1929.
Kaç katlı acaba burası?
And when the crash happened, he lost everything for $36 million in his entire fortune. Now the rumor is he actually designed this theater for his mistress. She wasn't a fool.
Yani degradé olmaz mı?
How I say this politely.
Gelemez.
She wasn't good. Terrible reviews in New York.
I'm not drinking
So
like
New
you
York
very
turned its
fast.
back on her. Samuel Insel said,
I know
"Oh,
you
that's
do.
okay, honey. Just come to Chicago. I'll build you your own theater." Because that's what you do in those types of situations. Samuel Insel lost all of his money. Ipso facto, he lost his mistress. Moral of the story, don't build your mistress as anything. And or don't have a mistress. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. To your right is a very historical plot of land. It's not the Starbucks. This building sheathed in brick right here. This is called the Great Lakes Building, which was the site of the Saguenay Hotel, which was nicknamed the Wigwam. Though we wind back to 1860, this right here was where Abraham Lincoln was nominated for his presidency on this block of land. Yeah. Passing the Lake Street Bridge, you're going to pass up the North Branch of the river. I recommend getting ready for this. You're going to have a beautiful shot of the main branch of the river in just a minute as we come on forward. So I recommend getting this ready if you look to your right. Here's my favorite portion of the river.
Like a 30 minutes and then go
This is also one of the perfect tours. Like, just what an evening, right? I've been giving tours since March, and Chicagoans know what that means. Is that I am up here by myself in the freezing cold. I think it's crazy. You guys remember the polar vortex that hit Chicago like 4 years ago? Yeah? Here's a fact. I'm back, baby, 2021. Beep, beep, beep, beep. Enjoy your Prosecco. That lady just heard me. I'm going to get another email. I'm an agent of chaos. This is my river. North Branch has been primarily industrial for a long time. This wasn't until the early 2000s it started to experience a sort of residential boom. Kinsey Park is a great example. Private gated community designed by George Papageorge to mimic European house houses.
İstanbul gibi
Give you
ama
all an idea of how badly
hepsi bir arada olduğu için ve de gökdelen
during that
olduğu için
boom,
farklı.
each townhouse there ended up selling for nearly $1.2 million each before they even broke ground.
Adam hiç 10
Their
dakikalık
biggest
dinlendi ama
concern is
hala
the volume of my voice.
çok fazla konuşuyor. Tabii konuşuyor, rehberlik yapıyor da.
Designed by George Higgins in 90s. It's less competition for them.
Şuradaki insanlar sanki sinema izliyormuş gibi hiç kımıldamadan adamı dinliyorlar
We
yani.
got a lot to thank Montgomery Ward for.
Allah bravo.
Because y'all, if it really wasn't for him, the city you see behind you
Adam
would not
anlatıyor,
be
onlar
what it is
dinliyor.
today. Now, to preface this, the Great Chicago Fire, as we keep talking about, destroyed us, wiped us out. But it gave us a second chance at designing a city. Now, Daniel Burnham doesn't feel cluttered here, right? Very spaced out. You can fit on the sidewalks, right? We've got our alleyways for our trash. You know, it's very...
Diyoruz, evet diyoruz. Next time. Evet, yol dönümümüzün, evinin ve dönümümüzün ilk saatleri Tekne Turu'ya geçiyoruz.
right here. You guys have seen a couple of bridges on this tour that have just been sitting up there in this position like that. Now, that
Evet, buradan daha güzel
was the first
gözüküyor.
railroad bridge to cross the Chicago River. It's been sitting in that position since about 1978. Yeah. And then they used to lower it once a year, and they say they still do lower it, but I have never seen that in my years of being a tour dude. It's a landmark, so there is no touching it, there is no demolishing it. Most of the bridges on this tour, especially the ones you saw on the South Bridge, are landmarks, and so there's no touching those buildings, or those bridges, excuse me. Here we are, coming up through the junction once again. You're going to see another wonderful example of contextualism. Now, this means, who remembers what it means when a building, when a building is sympathetic to its surroundings? That's right. So look, straight ahead, this green building. See what the river's doing. See what the building's doing. 333 West Wacker Drive mimics the bend of the river, stretching 365 feet across. It's tinted in this green and blue glass in honor of the color of this river. It's gorgeous. Now look at its reflections, right? Beautiful. It's also mimicking the grid system on the other side of the river, right? Or the other side of the building. But I want you all to block out the sun and look directly at river point. Now you see the arc of base. See what that reflection's doing right there? You can see the reflection of our boat just underneath that red circle right there. See it? Now notice, not only is it reflecting our boat, it's reflecting the entire bend of the river to our right. That was intentional. That was designed to pay homage to this building's own contextualism. So this building pays homage to this building for paying homage to the river. So the building pays homage to the building, it's on the resume. You guys ever seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Yes. Remember that parade scene where Ferris's father looks down and somehow doesn't see his son singing Twist and Shout by the Beatles? Yeah. Filmed at the top of that building.
Beatles, I love the Beatles.
Yeah. And that parade scene took place 6 blocks south of the building. So that's why you didn't see it. Now, over $110 million went into the reconstruction of the riverfront. So now, you can walk all the way from the junction to the lake completely uninterrupted. Some of you guys might remember how it used to be. You used to have to walk down from the bridge. Made no sense. Walk down from the bridge, walk across, walk up, walk down. Made no sense. Now, this is much easier. And then about 3 years ago, we finished this projector right here. It's called Art on the Mart. So now, every night, just after sunset, digital media artists from all over the world plug in their laptops there and project their body of work across the largest digital artwork screen in the country. The building here is the screen. Pretty cool. I love Art on the Mart. It was 5 years ago, Chicago gathered a group of artists to pitch ideas for this projector. Hi. 5 years ago, they asked a bunch of artists to pitch ideas for that projector, and believe it or not, I was originally a part of that artist group. Originally, though, I wouldn't give me a hand just there. I said originally, because we separated due to artistic differences. They wanted Art on the Mart. My pitch was Blart on the Mart. I wanted 9 straight hours of that movie Polar Mall Cop on that building every single night. No explanation. They hated it. And now I'm a tour guide. So, live your dreams. To your right, you're going to see a street over here. This is called Wacker Drive. How many of y'all have driven on Wacker Drive before? How many of you have gotten lost on Wacker Drive before? Avoid this street. Avoid it. This is the most confusing street in Chicago. It's not this top street that makes it confusing. It's the 2 streets beneath it named the same thing. Upper Wacker, Lower Wacker, and Lower Wacker. There's also a north, south, east, and west Wacker. Google Maps can't figure it out. If you get into an Uber, if they take you down at the Lower Wacker, tuck and roll. We're still looking for a family of four in a Pinto. To your right is one of my favorite buildings, 77 West Wacker Drive. Mixes the classical elements of stone with the modernist reflective elements of glass. Greek temple architecture at its peak. Whereas next door to that you have 55 West Wacker Drive. That's called brutalism. That raw concrete. You normally see government buildings designed this way. We're talking prisons, DMVs, courthouses, Russian embassies. Every single one is always in brutalism. To your right is one of the largest ad agencies in the country, the Leo Burnett building, designed by Boulevard and Roche. Designed to have this column within a column design. Before we lose sight of it, I want to look straight ahead of the boat, a little to the right. You're going to see a green building with a gold top. That's the Pendry Hotel, built in 1929 by the Burnham brothers. Now, back in the 20s, other than the Great Depression, who can tell me what also was occurring? Prohibition, when alcohol was legal, that's right. Now, nobody was a fan of the Prohibition, and there were these architects, as they designed this building out of protest to look like a giant bottle of champagne. Has real gold terracotta at the top, too. Yeah. To our immediate right, you've got this beautiful jeweler's building with the dome at the top. That dome up yonder was a former speakeasy called the Stratosphere Lounge.
Şuradaki tepesi
That up
altından
there
mı
was Al
yapılmış?
Capone's favorite speakeasy in Chicago. Had his own office up there. No longer a speakeasy, it's home of the Architectural Foundation. But if you guys want to go to a speakeasy that's still running, like an even in the Green Mill Cocktail Lounge or off Lawrence and Broadway, that's still Cocktail Lounge.
Allah dinliyoruz, devam ediyoruz. İşte görüyorsunuz. Tabii sürüyor.
That's very exciting to meet people on the boat. To your right, you're going to see the London House, built in 1923 by Alfred Alschuler. This is known as the London House for a famous jazz nightclub that used to be on the first floor of the building. But now, this is a very historical block of land. This right here, y'all, is wing the city. And that's represented on the Chicago flag, which is right there. 4 red stars, 2 blue stripes, 3 white stripes. Each red star on this flag represent a major event in the history of Chicago. The first one is our beginning, our beer building. Remember that for later. And we'll quiz you. Are any of you looking for rooftop dining options? Drink on a rooftop? Yes, yes. Highly recommend the top of the London House back there. Stunning rooftop restaurant and bar. We give you the entire main branch in both directions. It's absolutely gorgeous. Highly recommend it. I have never been up there though. I got it on Yelp. But we just passed under the DuSable Bridge. Now, we gotta talk about that. Now, this was renamed in 2010 in honor of the founder of Chicago. And to your right, you're gonna see you're on Potawatomi land. Now, the city of Chicago was occupied by the Confederacy of the Three Fires. That was the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi tribes. And then the first non-Native American settler in Chicago was actually a man of Haitian descent. His name was Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable. Now, he established Chicago's first major trading post, which was actually just over there by the Fidelity Building. And it's commonly it's a common misconception that people believe that Louis Clark discovered this city. It's not true. It was actually Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable. Renamed that bridge in 2010 in honor of him. But up to your right, you're going to see the top half of a white building. See it? Black stripes stretching to the top. That is now the 4th tallest building in Chicago. It's the Aon Center. It was built in 1974 by Edward Durrell Stone. Now that building was originally clad in Italian Carrara marble, which is actually the same marble that Michelangelo used to sculpt his statue of David. Now, Chicago gets cold in the winter. This is a terrible understatement. 9 harsh Chicago winters went by. The marble on that building started to crack. And with the threat of falling falling on people's heads, Chicago requested he completely reclad that building. That cost him nearly $80 million. He reclad the entire exterior in North Carolina granite, which just goes to show, can't take marble for granite. The more you hate my puns, the bolder I get. Thank you. Wow. Thank you for your hand. Bunch of stone faces on this boat. I will keep going because these are marvelous. I've got like 10 more lined up. To your right, you're going to see this blue building being held up by the wires. That's structurally sound. Just kidding. No. Now this is an architect by the name of Jeannie Gang. We are enormously proud to call Jeannie Gang of Chicago because up the street from this building, you can actually see it. Get a quick glimpse over your right shoulder. The undulating balconies back there. See it? That building in 2009, Aqua, she took the title for tallest in the country by a female architect. Until later last year when she shattered her own record down the street from her own building. The St. Regis Towers of Chicago now stands at 1,186 feet, shattering her previous record to now take the title for tallest in the world by a female architect. She also now holds the title for third tallest building in the city of Chicago. Pretty cool. What's that? All residential. Yeah. Now you see that giant space in the floors up there? That was not in the original design. That is called a blow-through, because it did not pass the wind shearing tests as they were building designing the building. So the wind off the lake was going to push the building with such an intensity it would noticeably sway. So they cut out the 81st to 83rd floor. That's a blow-through, so wind cuts through the building, cutting down on wind resistance so the building won't sway noticeably. Crazy. But we're getting closer to Lake Michigan, which means we have to talk about the history of the Chicago River. We were just talking about this a moment ago. Now, this river did not flow in the direction it's heading today. How many of you knew this already? Okay, a couple of you did. This river used to flow in the direction the boat is currently heading. The river used to flow into the lake. It's new. It's different now. Naturally, this is what happened. Now, this is the problem. Lake Michigan, the lake is where Chicago gets its drinking water. That's our problem, because back in the early 20th century, very normal thing, you lived by a river, you had garbage and sewage. Where did you throw that? Threw in the river. River takeaway. That was the extent of our thinking back then. But it wasn't just garbage and sewage being thrown in the river. It was everything else. It was industrial waste, sewage, animal carcasses from the slaughterhouses, jury summons, people. We didn't care. We just like, take my brother. Throwing people in the river.
I think we would take it.
It got so bad a crust started forming on the surface of the river. Chickens were walking across it. That's how thick this got. That is what's flowing into Chicago's drinking water. Poisoning Chicago. 10% of our population's dropping dead of dysentery, typhoid fever, and cholera. But Chicago can't figure out why people were dying until this river self-ignited twice. Let me repeat that. It took Chicago 2 different occasions for this river to catch on fire by itself. And that's when Chicago was like, we still have no idea what's going on. Couldn't figure it out. But this is the early 20th century. We just sent it the other direction. Just dug a completely different canal down by Damon and 26th Avenue. Now we dug down 37 feet along 26 miles, connecting it to the Des Plaines River. So we dug a deeper canal. So on the night of January 2nd of 1900, in the middle of the night, without telling anyone, Chicago opened that canal, pulling all this dirty river and lake water out of the lake, reversing the entire flow of the river, pulling this stuff down the South Bridge, through the canal, into the Des Plaines, the Illinois, the Mississippi, down into the Gulf of Mexico. Chicago was thrilled. Walking around yelling, innovation. Obviously, St. Louis Louis wasn't happy about that, but they drank our water. And they got their own taste of Chicago. So they sued Chicago and lost, because it's Chicago. But St. Louis got us back because they took that dirty river water. They ended up bottling it up and selling it back to us. We actually still drink it. It's called Budweiser. We'll be able to take a couple pictures of our skyline to your left.
That's nice view.
Block out the sun. We're going to talk about Navy Pier in just a moment, but I want you guys to take a couple of pictures if you get a chance.
Because of the traffic.
Was originally known as Municipal Pier, but they renamed it to Navy Pier in 1923 in honor of World War I veterans. And in Chicago, we played our part in World War II. We actually used this pier to train Navy pilots. Over 16,000 Navy pilots went through that training program. The youngest person to graduate was George H.W. Bush. Crashed 3 times. Now Navy Pier is home to a botanical garden. You can see plants there. There's a children's museum. They have children on display. There's a Tony Award-winning Shakespeare Theater, IMAX Theater, restaurants, souvenir shops. It's free to go to Navy Pier. It's not free to do anything there. They're trying to bring more tourism back to the pier. So they plan to add a lakefront mirror at the tail end. It'll be like a shallow pool of water. Your kids can wade into it. They'll splash around. They'll have some fun. Winter will come. Water will freeze over. You can ice skate on top of that. The spring will come back. The water will thaw. And you can pick your kids back up. To your right is the only residential building that made it east of Lakeshore Drive. Lake Point Tower condominiums, built in 1968 by George Shipwright and John Heinrich. Now, as I mentioned earlier, because of Montgomery Ward, you can't do that, right? And how many of you have ever heard of Mayor Daley? All I have to say. People know exactly why that building's there. Now, it's primarily because there was a loophole that they say that the plan specified you couldn't build east of Lakeshore Lot Drive on land. This is technically landfill. It's a series of other politician things, and there it is, right? But to your right, you've got Riverview 1 and 2, designed by James DeStefano in 2001 and 2004. Now, James DeStefano, this architect is not from Chicago. He's from New York. I think you can tell. As you look to the top of the cylinder, can you guess what he's paying homage to? Top of the cylinder? Statue of Liberty, that's right. You can see the crowns all throughout the building here. Now the prices in this building, they range from around $1.2 million to about $9 million. A parking spot in this building ends up costing nearly $65,000. I once had a guy on my boat yell at me after I named those prices. From the back of the boat just yelled out, "Hey Dave, that's not that bad." To which I said, "This isn't about you." To your right, you're going to see the Sheraton Hotel, built in 1992 by Solomon, Corwell & Baines. Fourth largest hotel in Chicago, has about 1,200 rooms. Designed almost to look like that of a giant steamship, sheathed in limestone, green tinted glass. You guys looking at the wires of the St. Regis over there? Yeah. Yeah, those are for the window washers. Yeah. Now I have one question for everybody on this boat that is not a Chicagoan. So Chicagoans, don't answer this question. I already know you know the answer. Here it is. What do you not put on a Chicago hot dog? Ketchup, that's correct. It's a sin. Don't try this. Why? Great question. I don't know. Now, my favorite hot dog joint is on the north side. It's called the Wiener Circle. Anybody ever been there? It's my favorite place because they treat you terribly. That's why I like it. I like a little shame when I eat a hot dog, so it's perfect. This actually happened to me 4 years ago. I was walking out of this place with a friend of mine. Watched a stranger put ketchup on his hot dog, walk out to Clark Street like nothing was wrong. When I swear to you, random passerby, random dude walked right up to this man, slapped it out of his hand and went, absolutely not. Walked away. That man stood there like a child that dropped his ice cream, staring at it, single tear, looks at me and goes, what'd I do? So I informed him. I walked right up to him and went, you're not from here, are you? You don't know the rules. Okay. Welcome to Chicago. And I disappeared in the shadows. Don't put ketchup on it. Just a heads up, folks, we're going to be approaching the dock very soon. And as we do, we may or may not bump up against the dock. I don't want anybody falling over. So I recommend remaining seated. Right now we've got the legendary Wrigley buildings right here, built in 1919 and 1924 by Graham Anderson Frost. It's not designed in honor of Daniel Burnham's The Right City, which he designed for the World's Fair in 1893. Now,
Chicago'ya gelecek olan varsa denesinler arkadaşlar. Ben sevdim yani. 1,5 saat yaklaşık 40 dolar ben geçeceğim. Buraya mutlaka gelin arkadaşlar.
Beginning, yes, the big settlement. And what's the second Red Star represent? Fire of 1871 wiped the slate clean, allowed us to rebuild. What's the third Red Star represent? Fair of 1893, that's right, brought all this tourism back to Chicago after the fire. And what's the fourth Red Star represent? Cubs in the World Series? No. Anyone else? It actually represents Oprah. No, it doesn't. But she's an inspiration. Represents the Century of Progress World's Fair in 1933. 2 World's Fairs in Chicago. The blue stripes in the flag are our waterways. It's the lake and the river. The white stripes represent the city's south, west, and north sides. Now, as we dock, I just want to say to everyone, on behalf of Mike Dillon, thank you very much for